See what we got. All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Y'all come on in. Come on in. Come on in the room. In the words of the mother from the Mississippi Mass Choir. Come on in the room. It's Protest from Protest to the Polls, episode 3 tonight. And we are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. And we are so appreciative for everybody who's tuning in. Do us a favor tonight. If you don't mind, like, comment, and share this broadcast. Start your watch party tonight so that many people across Georgia as well as across the state. We've got people across the country who are watching us. And we're averaging y'all so far views right at about 3,500 views the last two episodes, and they're still climbing. So thank God for that. And again, I'm so grateful and honored to have my brothers and sisters on here tonight who are game changers, not just in the Black community, but in the community at large. So let me introduce everybody. They shouldn't need an introduction. They don't want one, but I'm gonna give them one. So let me go down south, starting off. My brother and friend, the pastor of the New Mount Salem Church there in Bakerton, Georgia. Where he is the guru. He should be the mayor of Bakerton, but we're gonna talk about that later. Y'all give it up, Pastor Craig E. Moore. Craig, say what's up to the people, man.
Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? Glad to be with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for coming in again tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we call her the X Factor because she gonna go save and street on you in a New York setting. Ladies and gentlemen, she's a prophetess and a minister and a prayer warrior. And she needs no introduction. But look, she ain't a killer, but don't push her. But she will shut it down. Y'all give it up for Shanita Davis. What's up, sis? Say what's up to the people, Shanita.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much, sis, for being with us tonight. Let me go on down to the east side where he says it is the best side. The mayor of East Macon. The mayor of East Macon. The one and only. You know, he is. Some people may call him DJ. We just call him Neat. That's Dominique Johnson, the urban CEO. Say what's up to the people, man.
What's going on, people? Glad to be here tonight again. Hope we can say something to encourage and edify you.
Appreciate you, bud. I got to go to my hometown, Warner Robins, Georgia. Where great things come out of Wartown. If you didn't know, I know Paula was mad because I said that, but it's true. It's true. Y'all give it up for my sister, my friend. She's a community shaker. Whatever you need to know, community-wise, as well as she got Jesus in her too. We know that she got Jesus in her because Jesus, look, where she with us, she give Christ sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Y'all give it up for my sister, Fanika Miller. What's up? Say what's up to the people, Fanika.
Good evening, everybody. Thank y'all for having us again. Excited to get it popping.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. And last but not least, y'all give it up for the mayor of Unionville, born and raised on the playground where he spent most of his days chilling in the house, relaxing, maxing all cool, while trying to shoot b-ball outside of the school. He is the reason why there is no more Southeast High School in Macon, Georgia. But thank God he got delivered. He is my friend. He is my brother. And he's Natalie's husband, but JJ, Micah, and Aaliyah's goddaddy. That's how you have to introduce him. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Paul, y'all say what's up to the people, man.
The South got something to say tonight. Southside.
Hey, man. I thank all y'all again for taking time on the schedule. We're not going to be on here long tonight because we got some things we all want to do after this broadcast. Praise the Lord. And again, please like, share, comment. If you have questions, put them in the comment. We'll do our best to try to get to them. If we don't get to them, make sure we address them in a way, hopefully, than our next one. I'm looking at maybe doing, we don't want to go too long tonight because Paul Little knows basketball is coming back. And
Yeah.
we're trying to prepare ourselves
Yes,
for
sir.
his
Yes, sir.
all right, man. Let's jump right into it tonight. We have some specific things we're going to talk about, and I just believe it's going to help all the people tonight. So, Dr. Craig Moore, I'm gonna jump right at you first, man. Uh, Craig, we've been really diving in, uh, talking about uh, trying to do more about community engagement, trying to do more about being more prevalent in this time, uh, with our actions and our addressing issues of the day. But I think we need to start this off by addressing some things that people in our community really need to understand. Really, how we've been recapping the last couple of weeks of understanding the power of not just allowing this to be a moment. It was, um, I want to say, it was one of the senators, I can't remember the name, and they came out today in an interview and said, if you think the Black Lives Matter is just going to be here and gone tomorrow, you don't lost your mind. Let's really dive in and help people understand the power in moving us from a moment to a movement in regards to our issues of our community that we have to address all the way around, because there's so much that's affecting us as a people. So talk about that from that standpoint for us, please, sir.
Well, just to start off, one of the things that just today kind of struck me as I was flipping through different news and media outlets is how we cannot count on media to fuel this moment into a movement, and media will fizzle out, and really cause it to be just a moment if we rely on that. Because one of the things I noticed today is that, and I don't know if you all noticed it or not, but media was dominated by COVID-19. And the rising and the spike and the numbers, the different states and the governors that are reopening or that are closing again because of the rise in numbers. When we do not visibly see a movement, when we do not visibly see the fight, that really cuts a lot of our folk who are not accurately connected to the fight or to the movement, because a lot of the excitement on some hand and a lot of the forward progress on another hand were because all eyes just a week ago or 2 weeks ago in the last few weeks were on the movement. But now that media has switched its focus or switched its attention to the hottest story, I believe that this is going to really test, because right now your average citizen, where would they go to get information on whether or not there are people still in Atlanta protesting? Are there people still in Minneapolis protesting? And I laid that to say this. This is why this episode tonight and our conversation, our intention, and what we've been saying is so crucial. Organize, educate, connect, unite, and because we cannot, as we see, we'll lose fire, we'll lose momentum, because we haphazardly or were, favored by media coverage. But now, do we know if there's a protest in Chicago, Illinois right now? Do we know Are the numbers still up in Baton Rouge or in Jacksonville, Florida? You know, are more people now rallying for statues to come down? And so all these questions abound, and just again reinforce what we know to be true, that if we're going to, or no, not if, as this matures into a movement or solidifies as a movement, the circle or the chain of communication has got to be tight. It's got to be tight. And I think that, you know, that's the thing that jumped out to me today. But other than that, the obvious thing is awareness of community issues, awareness of social issues, awareness of, you know, how to affect change as it relates to policy, you know, and all of that comes from education and looking at those people who are already in strategic places, who have a voice, who have presence at the table, you know. But again, all of that is going to be predicated on a concentrated, you know, organized effort, that does not rise and fall on hype, on a moment of excitement or a moment of anger, right? You know, we've really got to solidify the fact that you've got to be in this for the long haul,
Right.
because the issues don't stop just because, you know, the media outlet covers, you know, the next hot topic. So,
Right.
so to me, to move it, to make sure that it's a movement, and that's what our goal is, and that's what we believe, that's what we feel. We've got to build it as such.
So,
It's
so
got
if
to
I
be
hear you,
foundationalized.
yeah, if I hear you correctly, it's about the again the mobilization of it,
Mm-hmm.
and not just the mobilization, but also the sustaining of it. Because I think a lot of times we get stuck after the like election and stuff don't go our way, then we just go back to our corners and hide. But then, hey, we still have to be prevalent and still have to be just as passionate about what's ahead of us, and what's in front of us, because no matter which way this goes, we've got to hold people accountable that this is not just a moment. I think too many times in the African American community, and Paul, jump in right here, we sometimes lose uh, momentum because stuff didn't work out the way we wanted to. You know, we kind of get disheartened, like what's the use? And so kind of talk to us, Paul, if you can, in regards to about regaining focus, from that standpoint. It may not have worked here, but just talk about it.
Yeah, so all momentum starts with a moment, and the moment has to be managed and maintained by effective leadership. And so when there is a waning of momentum and hope, that's a leadership deficit, because leaders, one of the responsibilities of leaders is to help people to maintain expectation even when we don't get immediate results. And so we need leaders in the faith community, in the business community. We need leaders in the political community who will help to galvanize people and understand that this is not a sprint. This is a long-term marathon. We're not going to be in this particular context for 2 weeks and get immediate change. It's going to take years for us to get to the place where we can see equity and justice and to see systemic racism being dismantled in our country. And so it's going to take time and it's going to take patience. I think for the people who are looking for microwave solutions, you want to click a button and everything is changed tomorrow. Those people aren't going to be able to be a part of the sustainable solution and strategy that is going to take for us to really see change. So I think it starts with leadership, and I think leaders must ensure that people are getting information, that we are communicating to people what the next steps are. And I think that's a major part of it. When there's a lack of communication and when there's a lack of a plan, people seem to lose focus. And so hope is great, but hope is not a strategy. We need hope. We also need planning. We need comprehensive strategic planning. And so we want to help people to maintain hope, but in the interim, we also want to have some practical steps, actionable items people can commit to.
I love that. Anybody else want to join in real quick before we move on that? All right, good. So check this out. Pastor Dominic Johnson, let me throw this question at you. and then and then Shanita, I'm coming at you. Right behind you. Pastor Johnson,
What's
what
up?
would you say? What would you say is the role or the catalyst between the church and the community in regards to um, developing and transformation as well as empowerment? What it's going to take? What is it going to take for that bridge?
I think I'm a word guy, so I think we have to go back number one to a theological foundation of the church. So first of all, let me say this: I think when we look at the church, a church, if not known, can have three identities, right? So you can be a country club, a cult, or a catalyst, right? And so you got to decide where your church is right now. We have to do an analysis, and when we do that analysis of where we are, like Paul is said, a leader has a stage where it's for members only. You pay so much and you get free benefits. Am I a cult? If it ain't like us, it ain't. It's going to hell. This and that. Or as a catalyst, are we unified around a particular thing, which should be the gospel and the transformation of people and places? And so I think when Jesus says on this rock I build my church, we must really understand what the church is. Now, hear me. I know people say, because nothing like this pandemic has made us really go back and say, hey, the church is the people. So we have to really get that. We have to also see that word, and forgive me for saying this groundwork, because this is how I think theologically to move me forward. So when I really look at what is the church, it was really a secular term that Jesus brought and sanctified it for his use. And because the church, as we know, were a group of citizens who went outside of the city to conduct the business of the city. So when I start looking at what I do so now if my paradigm goes back and shifts to that, then my practice must shift. That doesn't mean the gospel is not preached. That doesn't mean that we still don't feed the hungry and clothe the naked. But if we are ecclesia, the set apart or the sent out ones, then that means what am I sent out to do? I'm sent out to go transform. And Paul has heard me say this before. This is my groundwork. Everywhere you see, when you're talking about being a catalyst, the water in Ezekiel's temple got deeper the farther away it got from the temple. And what happens is the church must get into deep waters by getting away from the temple. So what happens is it starts inside, but it must flow out. And the further I come out in that water, the further I go out, the deeper we get. But here's the purpose for the water. The water is called to give life. It said it gave life everywhere it went. You also see that in Revelations too. And so I think number one, we must have a paradigm shift again, or resetting of what is our purpose as the church. When I get that, my purpose as a church is really what we do now, man, is if you look at it in the history of the church, it's fairly new. They met up on the trees, they did this and that. Me, like anybody else, I'm not trying to get too far off subject. I'm ready to come back in. I'm ready to do that. But I have to realize, though, if I have been preaching and teaching our people, we have been doing that in the right way as the church, then guess what? This is no greater time for them to go out and witness. This is no greater time for them to take life into their communities. And that's number one. So I can go in a little deeper later on, Jay, unless you want me to go keep going. But I first want to say that we must keep going with. Okay, so we must say that. We must end up saying, hey, this is who we are called to be. We are called to be to go out and change this community. When you look at it, there's certain movements now. It's called the 7 Mountains movement. I'm not saying I ascribe totally to the concept, but the concept of that concept says there are 7 culture shapers, which is business, government, education, arts and media, healthcare, and the social sector. And so what that means is this: if I'm going to affect my community and transformation, then I must train up people. Or watch this: the people that I draw, they must be equipped to go into those sectors to bring about change. And so,
Yeah.
particularly in business, government, and education, those are primarily the three main arteries of a city. So, if we're going to change a city, we must be included in the actions of a city, right? So, we can no
Right.
longer be, what good is salt in the salt shaker, right? And we must also begin to change our language and all that type of stuff, right? You can't go out, you gotta change your language. Your language gotta go from the stained glass to the plain glass, right? You can't,
I love it.
yeah, you can't. I mean, much of y'all know me, I'm about the cost on here, so, but I love to say the anointing and all that, but I can't be in a meeting to my, you know what I'm saying? No, but I gotta do it. So, you know what? I got a feeling. Let me say the feeling. Everybody, that don't mean I'm denying myself. I'm denying the Holy Ghost and that. What it's saying is, you know what? I picked up on this. What about this? And so as we go in, man, we must do that. So I think even pastors have to retool themselves to say, where is this thing church? Let me look at the history of it again and see when Jesus commissioned those 12 guys to go change the world. Watch this, without an organ, without a B3, we love all that. But all they had was the power of the Holy Ghost, and they took what they had out. But they also equipped citizens to go out. Here's the last thing, and I know the two ladies, and I got more, but what really got me one time, Jay, because, we could be church on a lot of stuff, and I thought about this. Daniel is known as a prophet. And if we don't renew our mind, how we think of what a prophet is, we used to that thing Daniel had on a collar. He was prophesying. Daniel worked in the government, man.
Yeah.
They're a prophet. Daniel worked in the government. He was the advisor to a king.
Yep.
He wasn't no less a prophet.
Yep.
But guess what? When they needed an answer, they had somebody with integrity and somebody who wouldn't bow down. And that's how you transform a culture, man. He stood to who he was, right? And what we call the Daniel fast is not really a Daniel fast, it's a Daniel lifestyle, right? Because he said, try me for 10 days. What he was saying is, at the end of the day, I'm saying this for a reason too. He said, at the end of those 10 days, see how I am. And then guess what? If my lifestyle, the way I'm living, is of a benefit to you, then let me continue to live my lifestyle.
I love it.
We call it Daniel fast. It was Daniel's lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so that's what the world is looking for. Even if we're not perfect, they at least want us striving for perfection, right?
Yeah.
So my thing is that, man, I got a whole lot, but I know I'm pretty sure we got time. So first of all, to recap, I know I said a lot. Let's assess. Let's assess. Are we at a country club or a cult status? Are we a catalyst? What is the basic? Are we living out the true definition of ecclesia?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's rich.
That's it right
The true a group of people set apart. Not only did Nehemiah, and this would have been an alley for Paul, but one of the ladies can pick it up too. Not only did Nehemiah rebuild a wall, we focus on him building the walls a lot, but he also rebuilt the gates. And the gates is where the big transaction took place.
Yes.
Watch this, Nick. It's amazing. It's amazing you say that, Nick. And Shanika, I want you to put this in here. Watch this. You can't see what's in the walls until you first get to the gate.
Yeah.
When business transactions were being done, most of them were done at the gate.
Yes.
Now, here's the question. Nick talked about the Catalyst Cult Country Club. Here's the question. Cults and country clubs always got gates, but Catalysts don't.
Mama.
So why is it important that we understand, just like the leadership development for our communities are key at Gates, our civic development is just as key at the Gates, because most people, they dismiss, they want the power to make the decision, but don't want to engage with people civically who it really matters with the decisions that are being made. Talk to us, Shanita, about that, about why we need that civic engagement.
Yes, that's a critical component, and Craig and Pastor Paul and Pastor Dominique both have touched on it. Is that the importance of education in order for us to be a transformational hub, in order for us to be a catalyst? That number one, we got to be educated on the process. You have a lot of and I'll give a little I don't want to say pushback, because what's happening right now is that as you mentioned, with the media and things being highlighted and seem like, we're at the crux of something that's automatically happening, when in actuality there's been a lot of hard work that's been happening for a very long time, and a lot of people been on the front lines like with a pick just hitting at a stone, but we're going to keep hitting at this stone because eventually we know the one that can break a stone, so we keep pushing at it. But the other part of it is, as we need people, we need bodies, we need individuals involved, the intentionality of educating people on civics and what does that mean? What does civic engagement actually mean, and what does it look like? I think from a grassroots perspective that we got to go back to the way that it was done within the 50s and within the 60s, that we get people in hubs and we begin to educate them on the process. What does a local government, how does a local government operate, from your commission, your city council, your water authority, your school board? What does that look like? How does it function? How does it flow? Because in order to get people to understand why their vote is important, they need to know the process of this is how the decision is actually being made. So in order for us to empower people and individuals and take our cities back and begin to put people in positions of authority that they need to be in order for changes to happen, then we got to be intentional in doing that. We can't keep talking at people and refusing to bring them to the table and educate them. All of the vote shaming, all of the you don't want no change, you don't want no change. But I'm just hearing from you now, as we said on some of the other broadcasts that we did. So number one, we got to take the time to get people educated and then help them to get involved. How do I get involved? When are the meetings being held? We just assume people know things because they don't. I didn't. But when I was a part of public assistance and living in public housing, I knew none of the things that I knew now until I went and got an education, then got a job and became involved in those things. It wasn't because my community was intentional in teaching me these things. That wasn't it. It was because I was a part of a system that is affected by the decisions that are actually made. And I understand that it's some gaps, some huge gaps. And when I walk in a room and it's all Caucasian people making decisions about what happened in African American communities and happened to African American children, and I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, excuse me, that's not how it happens. But if you're not in the room, you have no idea of what's being said, how it's being said, how the decisions are being made. And I'm not saying that all of it is evil. You got good intentions. Good intentions don't stop bad impact. Good intentions don't stop bad impact. It doesn't. So you have all the good intentions in the world, but you don't have the facts of actually how this happens in a community, how this actually impacts a community by the decisions that you make. And if you're not sitting at the table, then you don't have a voice. And it's important that we empower our people to have a voice. So I believe churches should have a social justice ministry of some sort, and every social justice ministry in every church does not look the same. It's not going to look the same, but we should be able to educate people on what is it, what are civics, how does this work, how do we get engaged, how can we be involved, and then we got to get rid of the fear that if I say a certain thing or be involved in a certain thing that I'm going to lose a certain status with the government, or this is going to happen, because we need all of that education, because most of the time that's a trusted place. How can we get people educated, involved, then take action? Am I registered? Did I get purged because I haven't voted since I voted for the first time with President Obama? So how do we do that? How do we make sure that people know when the vote is taking place? Do we help them to get a voting plan? What's going to be my voting plan? Early voting starts on this day. So I'm planning to go on this day. If I don't get there this day, what's my backup day? If I don't get there on that day and I get there and it's only one voting machine that's in operation on that day and it's a 5-hour wait, what's my plan? Am I waiting 5 hours? Because I got to get my voice to be heard. But in order to get people to have that kind of heart and that kind of compassion and passion in their heart and determination, then we got to educate them on the process. We got to educate them on what is taking place when decisions are being made. And then we need more leaders to prepare to run for office and to sit at the tables, to be in position, to be the managers, to be the ones to be bold and to be courageous, to stand up and be Daniel, to be Daniel, to be Esther, to be the ones of influence and to be real prophets. You know, you say something about a house and a car and all of those, but let's go back to Jeremiah prophet. Let's go back to Isaiah. Let's go back to Micah. Let's go back to the one that's willing to stand and say, you build an altar and I'm going to build one. And what does that altar represent? Now, I'm going to stop. I'm going to pause. Look, pause right there. What's on your altar? What's on your altar? Economic stimulus is on my altar. Poverty reduction is on my altar. That's what's on my altar. Racism is on my altar. That's one of these things that can get burned up if you get the right people in the right place at the right time. And we got to stop for those babies that are willing to be trained, they're willing to be raised up, and those that don't even know, even as Jeremiah said, don't call me that. Don't call me that. We got to go and get him and say, yes, you this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is how we can channel. It's time for us to go and get some drug dealers and tell them your shift is here. It's a new season. You call to do some political things. It's time for us to go and get some Rahabs. I'm gonna be quiet.
Come on.
No, I'm gonna pause right there.
That's my type of ministry. Now,
hey,
come on, dig around it.
Hey, everybody. The first catalyst we're ever introduced to in the Bible was Joseph. I want you to think about it. He goes through being lied on. First, let's start with what happened in his home. He goes through in his home of not being understood. He's hated. He's disliked to the point they make it look as if he's dead. They should sell him into slavery. He gets into Potiphar's house. From Potiphar's house, he's lied on by Potiphar's wife. Then he's put in jail. He helps he ministers to a baker and a butler. The baker dies, the butler lives. But the king, the Pharaoh, starts having dreams. And where none of his people could give him instructions, here comes a catalyst who brings change, who gives instruction. But watch this, he's a millennial. If we really want to look at it, Joseph's young.
Yep.
He's young, but at the same time, he's seasoned. So he can minister. He goes, helps Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, I ain't found nobody as wise as you. Because I think sometimes we allow what we know and use it to prove what others don't know instead of helping people get knowledge so they can know as well. You know, as if, yes, knowledge is power, but knowledge is bigger than just one person.
Yes, yes.
You know,
Pastor, can I add something right there to that narrative of Joseph right there? Because Joseph, when he got into a position of authority in the place that he needed to be, we got to
There
make.
you go.
I'm going there, sir, because sometimes it's the part that we don't preach. We don't.
I just throw the alley-oop.
We don't preach this part.
This though.
We still have to process our pain correctly, because Joseph still had a lot of pain that he was dealing with. The people to him dealing with an issue of food insecurity. That's we're gonna put a name on it and bring it into modern times. So they had some food insecurities. His family was hungry. Because Joseph still had pain that he had to deal with, he played a game with him. Put this in here, go down there and do it. But at the time, they were hungry. So sometimes we get in places of position and we haven't healed from what we've gone through. It's time for me to exercise my power instead of taking care of the issues that have come before me that my community is facing. It's more important for me to strut my stuff right now than to take care of the problem that is actually at hand. So we got to be, this ain't my time to get revenge. This ain't my time to, he had a moment. He had a moment. And he had to get it right, but he got it right. But it came up. It was stuff that was, and he had the power. So it's important that we process our pain correctly when we get in these positions of authority. So you won't be asking people to kiss your ring in order to get some help in the community. You won't be asking people to wear your robe and wear your armor in order to get the job done. They can do it in the way that God has created them to do it. Because you got to process your pain, because you've been suppressed by white supremacist ways. It's not time for you to come over and control me to try to take out that frustration. You got to heal in that area some other kind of way, because I'm not finna transfer over here to become enslaved under you. I want to work together and empower my community, but I'm not finna become enslaved to you to get a rite of passage and kiss your ring. I can't kiss the ring, but I can give you proper honor where honor is supposed to be given for the work that you have actually done. And I can respect you for the path that I'm walking on, because you created the path that I'm walking on. I can do that, but I'm not kissing the ring.
So watch this.
Good night. I'm here for Nick, and I'm gonna get off.
Hey, watch this. Shanita, you hit something because of the simple fact. Most of the time, we miss out on Joseph's real healing because he got emotional in front of the very people who hurt him. If you read that text, he had the power to destroy them, but he chose not to. And he lets his emotions, he releases it, because even though they don't recognize him, he knows before there can be a paradigm shift and before there can be a practice in the shift, there must be a pardon from the plantation. Simply put, I'll never embrace the shift in this paradigm until I've been healed from the pain of the plantation. Because most of us are still hurting, and we're hurting because we have subsided to a plantation mentality, arguing over which one of us have the better master, instead of understanding we're not bound to the plantation. We have the ability to make change, enforce change, but we need somebody like a Fanika Miller who can give us understanding to why these policies are the way they are. See, I just threw Fanika an alley-oop, and I'm gonna see if she's gonna catch it. Because most of us, we talk when I'm gonna be honest, and y'all can unfriend me if you want to when I say this. When they started talking about defund the police, I said, "Fools, y'all crazy." because it's not about defunding police. Police need funding. What needs to happen is there needs to be a strategic reformation of the police department so that we don't have people who are trying to hurt people and they still deal with pains. They still deal with PTSD. They still deal with mental issues. They were bullied as a child, and now you're gonna look at the person who's giving you resistance, and you're gonna treat them like that bully because you weren't healed from a child. So we need reform, policy reform, but you can't get policy reform until you first understand and have been educated on the policy. So Tamika, right here, help us understand, give us some examples of some policies right now that, if you want to do the police reform, that's fine, however you do it. That stuff that's affecting us right now as a people, and then there's some policies we don't realize that are affecting us, and give us like information on how this goes back to public policy. It's connected to public policy. Everything it's all the change in the community that Callis Neek was talking about. Shanita was dealing with us understanding of the hubs that we had, getting people to understand this is you can't act like this here, but if you want change here, you got to know the game they playing. Craig talked to us about the momentum, keeping the momentum and mobilizing that still, so it's just not a moment. So, Anika, help us understand right here why, or understand the certain policies and why they need reform, and then Paul, what I want you to do is when she's done, I want Pastor Little to come and show us the economic side, the economic piece here, because again, money is engaged in all this.
Yeah.
So, Anika, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. When I speak to people, I tell them that policy affects you from the rooter to the tutor, because in our community, we understand, what pork represents, right? From the snout to the tail, everything in between is policy related. Shanita mentioned that, if you're not at the table, I say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that is what has happened in our communities.
Hold on. Wait. Fanika, I told you had a preacher in you. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
You're on the menu. And so our communities have been served up for generations upon generations, right? And I think we're at a tipping point right here when it comes to how we see the young people rising up. We see a multi-generational movement of young people and of people in general moving around reforms to the system that have caused us to be on the menu for generation after generation after generation. Shanita also mentioned kissing the ring. These elected officials have that opinion because as candidates, you are taught that you have to kiss the ring in order to move to the next level, right? So transforming that culture of how we are developing candidates to be in positions to make decisions that are going to affect us, that they are in those positions and not becoming gatekeepers again. But I just wanted to hit those points. And also going back to how we organized the 50s and the 60s, the SCLC and the SN, the SNCC models of teaching young people how to engage with law enforcement. Do you understand what your rights are as an individual? And just having the knowledge and the wherewithal of how we have to engage with individuals when we come into positions that are going to be volatile or that could put us in positions of harm. So, the panelists have had some great points all throughout our time. To get to the policy prescriptives. So when we talk about law enforcement, I have a very smart man in my household who had the benefit of being in law enforcement for over 2 decades. And we have these conversations a lot of times. Police officers need to be asked when they're hired during polygraphs, are you racist? Have you been part of a racist group? Do you have any dislike against any race? Completely eliminate. So let me just pause right there, because you can stop a lot of stuff at the polygraph. Citizens, yes, right at the gate. Citizens review panels and advisory boards, making sure that they have a line item in the budget of every county or city, right? Having a legal representative on the council, making the citizens review board the first line that officers, so first line officers have a voice, so they're not afraid to communicate with their supervisors when there's toxicity within that department. Take it outside of law enforcement, take it outside of, IA reviews, put it directly in the hands of the civilian review board. That'll put a stop to a lot of those other things, and making sure, again, that they're funded. Completely eliminating and making it illegal for officers to shoot individuals in the back. That's another thing. We can do that. We don't have to wait to do that. That can be a policy that can be implemented right away. Your mayor, your sheriff's department, they can eliminate that that policy today. Making sure, hold on, let me get my notes because I wrote so much down. When we're training officers, there's a lot of conversation around how we train officers, but training them from a service model, from an authoritarian model to a service model, right? I agree with you, Pastor Louder. When I heard the phrase defund police, that didn't jive with me. Right? We need law enforcement. They serve a role in our community, but it does not have to be an authoritarian role. It can be a service role. They are there to protect and to serve. And so we need to shift our training from that to service. Making proper guidelines for law enforcement officers, for victims to be able to sue in court. Right? Because we all know that this country revolves around money, the almighty dollar, right? And if law enforcement is, if they start being hit at the bottom line, right? Those pensions start being hit and we start going after that money, a lot of this stuff will change as well. At the state level, understanding how policies are implemented in your community. So your law enforcement agency, your local police departments are funded through, your city or depending on your county level government. Your sheriffs are elected officials, right? That's another thing. We can repeal the stand your ground law in Georgia. We can do that. We can overhaul the citizens arrest statute, increase false arrest penalties in the state of Georgia. We can look at how many unnecessary crimes are on the books. Disorderly conduct crimes, that's at the officer's discretion a lot of times. Knowing the authority of district attorney's offices as gatekeepers in the community, in the criminal justice system. Deciding who gets charged with what crime. They have a lot of authority, a lot of unchecked authority that people need to understand. What does disbarment look like for district attorneys who don't do their jobs, as in the case of Ahmaud Arbery? Automatic kickups to the GBI for officer-involved shootings. Officers do not need to be investigating themselves. Right. And codify it, right? Make it a law. Don't let it be at the discretion of law enforcement. That ought to be a standard operating procedure. Understanding the culpability of coroners when it comes to determining cause of death. If you watched the George Floyd be murdered on TV, and then you saw the coroner's report that said they really couldn't determine the cause of death because he had a lot of underlying health issues, and you think back to the lynchings that our forefathers and ancestors endured and the racial terror that they endured, and how coroners didn't list the actual cause of death as homicides. You see what I'm saying? There's a lot of culpability in elected positions that we don't have a full understanding of.
Sure.
And also leveraging the power of the recall. If these elected officials don't do their job, get them up out of there and replace them with someone else. We can get a GoFundMe with 5,000 people or signatures. We can also leverage the power of recall petitions to get elected officials up out of those offices.
Wow.
See. Hey, Paul.
Thank you.
See, again, now, Paul, Craig, Neat, Shanita, this validates Shanita's point why every church needs a social justice person to lead ministry and a person to lead it. Because we have people in our churches who don't know this stuff. You know, it's almost like, and I'll be semi-transparent. I'll never forget I had to go to court for a speeding ticket. I knew I was guilty, but when I started seeing people up there using any kind of thing to get out of it, I'm sitting there like, well, shoot, let me see what I can do too. But then, I mean, because you're looking at laws like, hey, what's going on? You know, you had one man who did not know that he could have asked to see the speedometer, the tracking of the police officer, because he wasn't asked that. He happened to be black, an older gentleman, did not know. But me, I'm sitting there, but then there's this other guy, happened to be white. He goes up there and says, there's no way I could have been going that fast. There were other cars who was going, faster than I was. So it wasn't me. And you're seeing him get off just at a legality, and then he gets a slap on the wrist. But then you put this older gentleman on probation and make him pay not just the ticket, but do more because he really don't know the rights that's afforded to him. You got people who are sitting in behind bars right now. But then let's go back to Ahmaud Arbery. It should have never taken 2 months for them to bring this man to these officers to justice. But then when you realize 3 months and they were on the home team. Come on now, let's think about it. That was a recall. Go ahead, Nick.
One more thing with these citizens review laws is going back and taking a look at what kind of ordinances are on your city books, right? All these SAG and pants ordinances, that's a form of that's a stereotype. It gives you a cause to stop individuals who look like you and I, right? What kind of fines are assessed? What other harm could they be placed in based on that ordinance? So having the authority for a citizens review panel to even review policies that are on the books at our local levels, whether that be school board, city council, or whatever, that are intentionally racist and cause harm to our communities that are unnecessary.
Yes.
Paul, this is where you jump in. I want to encourage, and I'm gonna do this even myself at our church, even during the pandemic, because again, most of us have not came back to worship, but we're still doing ministry outside of. I want to encourage every pastor to find someone in your church who you know is already active in the community. If they're active in the community, you don't want to just give it to anybody. You need somebody who you can trust that's going to be active, who's already active, but at the same time is going to bring information to them and formulate, if you don't already have, a social justice ministry within your church. It is necessary more than ever because Shanita hit on it earlier. We need to know dates of elections. We need to know dates of early voting times. We need to know all this stuff because most of our church announcements are wasting time and energy on stuff that don't mean nothing. I'm just going to say it. Now I know Paul and Craig and Nick, y'all church don't do that, but I'm just saying. There are some churches, you listen to the announcement, be like this right here. Can we please get back to church? Can we please? I mean, because and if you, I'm be brave enough to say this too, and Paul, you can beat me up after this. If you are a pastor, if you are a pastor and you haven't said anything to your congregation about social justice,
Uh-oh.
Black Lives Matter,
Uh-oh.
uh, if you haven't said anything about the mother, a mother who's having to deal with injustice when it comes to employment at the same time. I mean, come on now.
Uh-oh.
Because let's look at it this way. Women are still underpaid.
Sure.
I said it. I said it. They're still underpaid. They can be doing the same job as us as men, but they still underpaid. And here's the thing: we don't say nothing about that because we're just as guilty because we use them sometimes in the same manner. You know,
Well,
I'm not all. It ain't us on here. We've learned a lesson.
you need to pass out. You need to pass out. Oh, there she goes. She back. She back.
No, she really pass out again. Come get the usher.
That's slang.
We're gonna get you the usher. But listen, this has to happen because again, within the next, I say the next 8 years, I believe in my heart we're gonna see a woman as the president of the United States.
Yeah.
We're gonna see more female governors. We're gonna see more female mayors. We're gonna see more female senators, House of Representatives, not just on a national level, but on a local level, state level. We're gonna see more of this because here's the thing: Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen, is 77 years old.
He won. He won 77.
177. Trump is 174. Joe Biden, look, man, he's 100. Look,
Still 177. Hey man, let's talk about this money, Paul.
come on, Paul, talk about the money, man. Come on, because you said 177.
Y'all remember coming to America when he talking about Rocky Mountain? Yeah.
So you done got him silly, man.
But come on, Paul, we really need to talk about this economic development because this is, again, where money talks.
Money talks, yes. So America is a corporation disguised as a country. And I think we have to come to grips with that. We got to make sure that we are.
Hold on, man. Just gonna give the opening statement. America is a what?
Yeah, I mean, am I right? I mean, it's a corporation that's disguised as a country.
You are right.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the history of our country, the country. Okay, so think about it like this: the people who rant and rave about looting and robbing founded a country based on looting and robbing. Okay, so you got a free start by not having to purchase property.
Mm-hmm.
So you started a business with no overhead. All right. Then you had almost 300 years of free labor. Don't pay the employees. Right. So your corporation thrives off of the trauma of people who you don't value. And those same systems are still in place in 2020, which is what all the racial tension is about. Right. So watch this. When we start talking about economic empowerment and a lot of the when we talk about going from a moment to a movement, a lot of it is economics, because when we start talking about whether it's defunding the police and all that different language that's being used, a lot of the politics is surrounding money. Okay, a lot of it has to do with money. Fanika will tell you that sometimes the difference between a great candidate losing and a good candidate and even a bad candidate winning is money.
Right.
Not qualification, not experience, not degree. The person who has the money oftentimes wins the race. Okay. So when we start thinking about this corporation called America, you got to look at the fact that there was free labor and we were the ones who were providing that free labor. All right. When we came out of slavery, we went into a period called deconstruction, which led to reconstruction. where Black people were thriving for a period of about 9 to 10 years. Okay. Then we went into this entire system where we talk about Jim Crow laws. We can go talk about segregation. We can talk about criminalizing Black people. All of these different things. Mass incarceration is about money, right? So you look at all of these different things, and here's the conversation that people don't want to have. People don't want to have the conversation about a lot of the fight is about money. So when these people say Black Lives Matter, here's the next question. Can you put your money where your mouth is? And I think Jesus helps us with this. Jesus says, for where your treasure is, that's where your heart is also. So basically, you invest in what you value. So if you value Black lives, then that means that you will put policies and programs in place to right certain wrongs that has been committed over a period of about 4 centuries. So think about it from a theological standpoint, then we'll look at it from a historic and a practical standpoint. Theologically speaking, I could look at the Bible and talk about how when the Israelites were brought out of the Exodus, one of the first things that God did was that he made sure that his people received reparations. They were enslaved for about 4 years, right? So now he gives them an opportunity to get a head start because coming out of the Exodus, they didn't have any resources coming to them for a period of about 400 years. Their ancestors, their children's children, all of this is now generational. It's a generational dysfunction that's happening. And so the people coming out of the Exodus, the Israelites coming out of the Exodus in Egypt, they had resources to get started because they were enslaved all of that time. When you start thinking about let's look at a New Testament model of this, all right? Because, and people ask me how I feel. I talk a lot about reparations. I just did a message about this a few months ago. When you talk about reparations and all of that, people say that it's a big, lofty idea and they don't know if it's possible. But think about it like this. We just figured out how to get trillions of dollars freed up to give everybody a stimulus of $1,200. And correct me if I'm wrong, Fanika, I'm hearing that is going to be another surge, another stimulus, possibly coming out for about $2 grand. All right. So we're finding money to do all of these things. So when we start having conversations about funding Black businesses and making the laws and making the economics work for those of us who are people of color, the first thing people in politics say, well, we don't know if that's feasible, but we find money to do everything else. So it's about value. It's where your treasure is. That's where your heart is. So let me give you this New Testament example, okay? There's a guy who works for the government who's short in stature. His name is Zacchaeus. And he saw Jesus coming through this crowd, and he has to get up on top of a tree in order to see Jesus, right? Jesus says what? Y'all preachers, so y'all know, make haste, come down, hurry up, come down. Today I'm going to eat with you at your house. He comes down, has an encounter with Jesus, this governmental official, okay? After he receives salvation in Christ, what is the first step that he makes after salvation? He doesn't go to new members class. He doesn't get baptized. The first decision he made, you all right, Dominique? Y'all get him. Can we get an Ursula over in Lozella? Y'all have him out. Listen, the first thing Zacchaeus does is, without Jesus prompting him, he recommends for him to pay back the people he stole from.
Wow. Reparation.
That's what Zacchaeus does. He says, I want to pay back 4 times what I stole. So watch this. When there is genuine repentance, there will be genuine recompense.
Talk.
And people don't feel the need to give back because they don't see they've done anything wrong. And there's no recompense. Now you can call them reparations, you can call them whatever you want. I don't know if y'all know Robert Smith. He's the billionaire that paid the debt for the class. Robert Smith has a great article. I'll send it to everybody if y'all want. Has a great article called The 2% Solution, where he says if every major corporation takes 2% of their annual earnings over 10 years and intentionally invest it back in the Black community, we can solve the poverty issue.
Wow.
2%, right? And strategic and structured, models of ensuring that when it comes to funding of Black businesses, when it comes to home ownership, when it comes to what's her name? Harriet Washington, great book by Harriet Washington. medical apartheid. So we can talk about healthcare and how all of that plays into the whole piece about economics. Medical apartheid, Harriet Washington, all of these things are about economics because we are in a corporation that's disguised as a country. And just like Fanika said, the reason that many of us aren't on the table at the table is because we're on the menu, and the reason a lot of that is because of economics.
And watch this, Paul.
Vision.
Paul Little, which furthermore is why certain people, after President Barack Obama's two terms as president,
Right.
were so willing to, like, we need some change, we need somebody different
Yeah.
to run it. And so you tried to get watch this, you chose a businessman with failed business ventures,
Yeah, a reality show star.
a reality show, and you wanted to put him to be in charge of running the country.
Yes.
And now that the country is not doing what he quote unquote thought it was going to do, he's now trying to find, and people are, I don't want to use the term stuck on stupid, but they're dumb and blind.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. To think that this man is going to change when really what he's doing is he's begging you, kick me out. I can't file bankruptcy.
Right.
I can't file bankruptcy on this because really this is, I don't own this. But what I'll do is I'm gonna try to get outside people to influence an election. Okay, I'm gonna shut up because now.
Let me mention this before we move on. Last week when I made the comment about being bipartisan, and I talked to a good trusted friend of mine who said, well, that can be taken to mean that we don't call people out on their bull. And I said, that's not the case. I can be bipartisan and still call people out. Watch this. I can be bipartisan and support somebody's platform economically if I want to personally. I cannot do that with church funds, but I can do that with my personal funds. And I do that, by the way. I live in Houston County, and there's somebody who I'm going to be supporting financially. Two people, by the way. Fanika knows exactly who those two people are because she was on the call, so she can confirm this. I'm not bull jiving. I'm going to support these people financially, personally, because their platform speaks to my values. Here's what I'm saying. I can be bipartisan and be a person that has influence and wealth and put somebody in the forefront to be the political voice. All right? So it does not mean that if I'm bipartisan, I have to play to both sides. It simply means that you can't buy me out with whatever, right? Because the person who controls the economics is the person who's ultimately going to control the game. Listen, we're a corporation disguised as a country, and here's the game that's being played. Monopoly is the game that's being played.
Talk, man.
It's about ownership, right? It's about ownership. And what we have to do is start teaching our people, listen to what Dominique said earlier. There's certain language that must be adapted, that must be learned as it relates to certain settings. So when we start talking economics, we got to start talking profit and loss. We got to start talking about funding the movement. Every movement Fanika mentioned about SNCC, the civil rights movement, SCLC, guess what? There were people funding those movements.
Yep.
The boycott that happened from December of 55 to 56 in Montgomery. Why did the white people in Montgomery listen when the bus boycott happened? Is it because we really want those Negroes to get a ride? No, it's because a year of money changes everything. Because the black people were supporting the local transit system. See, we want to stunt, so we can't boycott, because if we boycott Gucci and we boycott all these different places or whoever, then we're gonna miss our shine. And so we miss out on opportunities to make a major difference because we're focusing on individual prosperity instead of group economics.
And you know what, Paul?
We got to focus on the money. We got to, because where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. Jesus himself says that. If you love it, you will, and you value it, you will invest in it. And that's why I'm struggling, because we don't want to invest the money.
And see, again, I know I said it when this whole COVID-19 and all things were things in regards to our our Black Lives Matter movement. I've heard Nate say it on things.
Yeah.
You got to learn to hit, when you hit them where it hurts. When you hit them in the pocket, that's where they get. That's where the attention.
Yes.
Shanita will. We can go back to the Crystal Lake situation. When they knew it was their pockets were going to be hit for having to take care of stuff they neglected, all of a sudden now there were people who were like, wait a minute, this is I got to do this. Yeah, not just with property, but then you look at, I think our priorities are so jacked up that we put more focus on clothing than we do getting our minds, our thinking right when it comes to what we do in regards to our community. What matters most to our community? Because if it matters to you, you're gonna invest in it. I'll
Yes.
give you a prime example. Paul knows this better than anybody because he's his godfather. JJ, my oldest son, is going to high school. He's gonna be a freshman at Peach County. Most people know my son plays football. Pretty doggone good. Me and his mother made a decision today to invest in the NCSA. The NCSA is the recruiting process of next college student athlete. That's what it's called. We know that my son is not going to be noticed by recruiters or anything if he's not first registered with them. So you know what we did? We registered with them.
Yeah.
We took it, set aside some things we needed to make sure for a whole year and for all 4 years of his high school that he's going to have everything he needs to be taken care of. Why? Because he matters.
Mm-hmm.
His future matters.
Yeah.
The problem, what we've allowed media and certain politicians and certain platforms to make what they want matter, make it matter to us, instead of what matters to us, make it matter to them. Because that's the thing here. And Neat hit this earlier when talking about the catalyst and talk about, not being a cult. You got to understand, the culture is not going to change until you first make the culture realize what matters.
Yeah.
What matters. This has to matter. I'm sick and tired of people tripping off the fact that we won't, when we say Black Lives Matter, you're trying to make it seem as if we don't say all lives matter. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is we know all lives matter, but does my black life matter to you?
And if it does, like Netflix and all these corporations, put some money up.
Put some money up.
Jerry McFire, show me the money.
So
Hey, so here's the thing right here too. Like, I think when we're in warfare a lot of times, particularly I look at it as spiritual warfare, right? Because we're looking at a lot of time, we think spiritual warfare is always just, spirits and demons and that. But a lot of time you're dealing with ideologies. You're dealing with different ideologies. So it's how we also enter into a thing. And so when we're talking about educating people like Shanita, Craig, and what Nika has been doing, Paul started out by saying we must realize that this is a marathon. And so here's how, watch this. I'm going to show you, because what I've liked about Craig, everyone on here, to be honest with you, everybody, Craig, Paul, being more, and Paul being the main apostles of the word, and Jonathan, how you take what some people say no longer is relevant, and you see how they were able to make this word relevant to real life today. That's the power of a gospel preacher, the power of a preacher who is thinking live. And so what happens is you have to get somewhere around a word like that. Because when you look at it, every time that Jesus or the disciples ended up freeing somebody, they tried to kill them. They freed the Gadarenes. And what happened was this. They went to the pigs, the things that the people like. They said, get him out of here. right? Why? Because he's free now. And so what we got to do is focus on the freedom of people and not be necessarily come down out the wall and deal with Sanballat and Tobias. So what happens is we can get so busy trying to prove stuff to people who don't matter that we need to stay focused on freeing the people. That's what I tell people. I know racism exists, but I'm not looking for the racist. See, to the pure, all things is pure. So guess what? When the racists show up, shout, I'm gonna deal with you show up. But I'm not looking for you. I'm trying to free my brothers and sisters with the gospel and teach them to be practical and let them know there's a calling on your life and it don't have to be passed in front of your name. And that's the way we got to start doing. And you ain't got necessarily, guess what? You ain't got to. Here's the thing that kind of get us in trouble sometimes at Kingdom Life for me. Like my wife don't like the first lady things. She don't like it. We just who we are. But we understand it too that you also can't to not walk in it. There's also this honor what God has put on you. You get what I'm saying? That makes sense. But my point is, think about the girl who with Python. What happened when they got freed? What happened? Think about we going right back to what Paul said. They messed up. When they freed her, they could no longer use her for profit or for gain. That's why Paul and Silas got put in jail. Once again, true prophetic, apostolic, powerful ministry is going to loose and shake up economic systems. And so that's why we got to start really shaking our head. They say, get what? She's free right now. These dudes done messed up our money.
Yeah.
So guess what? That's what. But here's what I meant to go back to Paul. We got to, this for all of us who are ministers, Bible school, whatever you are, I know it gets frustrating. They should know, but we must first teach with all long suffering. Yeah. We're gonna have to walk with people and deal with this. That's what Paul told him to teach with all long suffering. If y'all first time reading, I'm a biblicist, so that's the only way I know how to kind of roll this thing. And so when we end up doing that, we must first realize this. I'm gonna go not deep, but just whatever for a minute. I always enter into the world because I don't have God sociologically. So what happens is my sociology informs my theology in the beginning. But because I'm now blood bought and washed and my mind renewed, now my theology should inform my sociology. But we got to realize we're dealing with people, all they know is their social condition when they first come in. So it's incumbent upon me, because I've been spirit-filled, my mind is renewed, to show them from the theos point of view how you're supposed to change the situation and cultivate your career. That's why don't be conformed, don't be squeezed in. So that's the role of the church. That was my role on here tonight. That's the role of the church, to say, look, this is what the enemy has done to blinded you, but let me bring you light. The interest of your word bringeth light, but let me make it practical. I don't mind hooping. Hear me? I don't. It's not my forte. Y'all know. Everybody know me. I like a good celebration, but let's teach the people some freedom and not let them come back every Sunday or Wednesday for a morphine hit. I need another hit. I need another hit. And guess what? Now we have babies who can't walk out. They can't walk into the bank and don't know how to ask and to put on nothing for a loan. They can't go in. They gonna go to the school with the high rollers for their babies. Let's deal with let's pull them in. Let's not just cut their head off at first. They come out. People gonna respect you how you dress. Let's talk to them like that. Instead of always showing. I can be guilty sometimes too. I don't know if she watching or not. Sometimes I see my little sister Facebook post. I'm like, shouting. So I can talk to her like that, shouting. But my whole point comes to this. We must, as the church, renew ourselves. If we gonna say the church is not the building, then we need to start acting like it. We really need to start acting like it and realize I take this presence with me wherever I go. When I walk in anywhere, if I'm walking in the dealers to look at a polo shirt, he's with me. You know what I'm saying? When I go to my job tomorrow morning, I have to understand I'm bringing everything that the kingdom is in me and out of my belly. That ain't no preacher's scripture. That's everything out of my belly. Out of my belly, I'm speaking life to my boss. You may be raising hell, but I'm going to speak peace right here. And they're going to have to calm down. You get what I'm saying? And so that's the power of the gospel and how we walk out in everyday life to make this thing practical. This ain't just in church and running around. I can't wait to get back to the members and see everybody life. But the truth of here. I'm gonna get somebody. We are saved on here. I'm sorry, it ain't, and I think people watching. I'm gonna get somebody saved. And while we at it, here's the urban CEO motto. We're gonna make $1 and a difference.
There we go. There we go. And see, Nick, I think that is so imperative that don't just be focused on the dollar, but make a difference. You know what I'm saying? Don't let the dollar be focus. Because
I think it's like what Paul said. We live in this world, so like I say, man, I think we just got to make this thing palliative. People realize. Think about it when Shanita used the story of Joseph. All that is straight from the word, man. You just now need practitioners who can explicate this word to make it down the line. That's all it is.
Nick, it's what we've been trying to do these last 3 episodes. Educate people. Make it simple and practical, where you're educated about what it is. You said it so beautiful in regards to don't beat up the young lady because she showed up to her kids' school with rollers in her head. If you want to make a difference in her, pull her to the side and say, hey, they respect you more. I think sometimes what we do is we have become thinking that we've got to be more disciplinarian than being more educational and give people the mindset that, hey, I'm already being beat up by the world, but I need somebody who's going to build me up.
So let me say this, Jay, real quick. And I know Pastor Moore probably got something. The thing of it is, man, back to the Shanita word is proximity. And so sometimes the longer we've been out the water, the longer we forget how it is to be fish. You see what I'm saying? I remember the reason why I go, and I'm not trying to brag on this and all that. The reason why I go, not now, I would go not now. The reason why I would go and stop on 4th Street, may know all that, because that's where I'm from, but I'm also trying to give them something. You see what I'm saying? Think about it. When Shanita told her story, so I ain't telling her business. She said when she was going through that, they were talking about her mama and them. Instead of somebody saying, hey, baby, y'all need something to eat. Your mama sick right now. How y'all? You see what I'm saying? Back to the group, they had all things in common. And it wasn't forced. See, when you have a true work of heart, there's no way on here. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't talk to Nick like that every day, but because I feel her spirit, all that, if she call and say, Nick, do what I need. If I can help her, I'm gonna do it. And I ain't gonna talk about it. Because I may be there. Everybody that know me know this right here. If you ride with me, you know me. If I eat, you gonna eat.
That's it.
It may not be steak, it may be, but if you ride with me, if I eat, you gonna eat. That's how I was brought up, but that's how God has done a work in my heart. When you look at this, man, it wasn't forced. Hear me when I say this, and I'm gonna fade to black. It wasn't forced socialism. It was grace-inspired socialism for them to have all things in common.
But you know what?
One that needed one, some money them. I'm not saying policy right, but when there's back again with Paul thing, when there's repentance, there's recompense. So now realize here's the thing. Because of the automobile, I can go to church and forsyth if I want to. Back then, Christianity that's why I say you gotta look at church history to understand, to get the power of the church back. When somebody claimed Christianity back then, they were ostracized. They were the new coat. Because they weren't a Gentile and they weren't a Jew. So they didn't have no choice but to stick together. And maybe we've gotten too comfortable. And maybe it's the crisis that'll make us come together.
See, Nick, I'm glad you said that, because it was every. Yeah, you saw that.
Yeah, let me say it. I'm sorry. That's an inside joke, man. I'm sorry. Y'all go ahead, Jay. I ain't mean to cut you out.
With everything that is going on in our culture, we have become too comfortable. The church as a whole, because again, the inception of the church was not birthed in a building. I need people to really understand that. The inception of the church was never birthed in a building. everything that Christ was teaching was to take place not in the building, but inside people's lives. Because real change happens. Jesus' teaching was more about building your life more than you building your bank account.
Yeah.
His teaching, he says, you're not going to be able to do this with me here. It's going to be best for you for me to leave, and you got to put it in action, but I'm not going to leave you lonely. I'm going to give you the Holy Spirit, who's going to show you, who's going to teach you, who's going to show you how to get it done. And because he's showing you how to get it done, you now can teach others how to do the same thing. I think what we've done, we've become so territorial, which has now made us comfortable, and making us comfortable make us confrontational.
Yep.
Okay, I got in trouble. I got in trouble. Please, y'all. Don't take this the wrong way, but you can if you want to. The only people who become confrontational in the church are people who are guilty. I said it. I said it. I said it. You become confrontational in the church because you're guilty. All these people across America who getting upset and want to pull out guns on protesters because they're marching, it's because you're guilty. All these people who are, and watch this. Hey, the gentleman from South Carolina who's a senator. Hey, I know you're Republican. Hey, man, please believe you have opportunities to speak up, to make a difference, but you will never be appreciated for being who you are until you call people out for what it is. And so what we have to do is stop trying to be so stop trying to just appease people because they're afraid of confrontation. The only people who are afraid of confrontation are people who are guilty. When you come, you're guilty, and you get upset because you feel attacked. You feel attacked, and so Craig, help us right here, and we're gonna and just kind of because we got to shut it down. We've been on here too long, and yeah, our soul got happy because listen, y'all. I want to encourage each of you who's watching this, and forgive me for not doing this on the previous episode. All of these people who are on this panel, they're just not my counterparts. These are my friends. These are my brothers. These are my sisters. They can check me and cover me all at the same time. Paul is the only one who would try to cut me because he had been delivered from we and I want to encourage everybody on here. Thank you, Pastor Slater. Yeah, Tim Scott. I want to encourage everybody on here. If you have not followed these people, follow Pastor Little. If you have not followed Fanika Miller, if you have not followed Shanita Davis, you have not followed Craig, follow Dominic Johnson. You need to follow them on their social media. Because again, what you're seeing from here is really how we are every day. Because watch this. This matters to us. This matters to us. And so, Craig, help us understand this narrative. We opened this about this not being just a moment, and this has been the narrative we've been pushing each episode of not just being a moment and mobilizing. We have been educated tonight. We have been educated tonight. Paul Little's going to put his link to that article so people can get it. So people can read it. I want everybody to read that. Read that article. I'm pretty sure. Yes, Zelda Hill. We. It's going to be. Why do people always in the middle of the broadcast all of a sudden say, "Is there going to be another broadcast?"
Y'all going into honorarium time now. I'm gonna put my cash up now.
Amen.
If the Lord leads y'all to bless them, hey, we will not reject it. we're not we're not charging anybody for this, but this is
So this really part. It's really gonna be part 4 you asking for.
yeah, that's really what you're asking for. That's
Yeah.
part 4. Because here's the thing. And then Craig, I'm giving it to you. We are, as Nick said in the beginning, and Shanita pulled it up. We're in a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It's a major paradigm shift. But watch what it is. We love to use this word paradigm shift in the church because we're talking about like another wave of glory that's coming in. Hey, let me help y'all real quick. It's a wave of glory coming, but it's not going to happen within the 4 walls.
Mama.
This wave of glory is going to happen where Jesus meant for it to happen. Streets, in the marketplace. And look, Jesus was the only one who could confront politicians, Sadducees, Pharisees, and they all look like dang. And they would always ask the question, where did he get this information from? Who is it? Isn't this the carpenter's son? So we have to be very, very cognizant and understanding we are in a shift, but this shift is not about glory coming to the house. It's about the people, the chosen, being the glory carriers and the glory revealers. Because we got to make change now. So Craig, help us close this with the understanding why this is so important again for not just taking it to our churches, not just take it to our, but making the shift. Make sure people understand this is mobilization.
Well, man, let me just start off by saying so many gems were dropped tonight by all of my counterparts. I'm just privileged to be on here tonight. But I was kind of jotting some things down as we've been talking tonight. And one of the things that we come back to when you're talking about mobilization, education, and you're talking about this being a prolonged movement, a sustained movement, and not just a brief, excitement or brief response to a current event. We've got to know why this needs to be a movement, and everybody involved, are from the leader to the follower, the financier, on the social side, on the law enforcement side, policy side, victim advocate side, even down to how the petty theft or whatever criminal for some misdemeanor offense is left in the hands of a public defender who really is overworked, underpaid, doesn't have time, so really they can't do their best. And then if you're not educated, you think that's your only option, or you just go with what they tell you, and then some folks, sometimes you throw your whole life away, or 10 years of your life. So education is so critical, but we got to know what our movement is. The other thing I wrote down is as we're getting educated and others are getting educated, we cannot shuck and jive from the responsibility of keeping this popular, because it's still got to be an attractive movement, which means well ran, well organized, focused. It's got to be popular. It's got to be. It can't be in left field. It can't be, what everybody thinks. It's got to be focused, right?
Yeah.
And we'll get to your issue based on priority, based on proximity, or what have you. But it can't just be, oh, I got a good idea, and because we'll never get anywhere. So know the movement, get educated, make sure it's popular, and then you've got to have people. They may not be educated, They may not have got a high school diploma, but they're Flavor Flav. They're hype men. See,
Yeah.
every movement has to have somebody. You can tell a puppet what to say. You can tell. You can give a hype man a script and say, "Listen, I need you." We see it at political rallies all the time. So
Yeah.
you got to have somebody, and I'll say it this way, to rally the troops, right? Because everybody doesn't have a voice that'll move a crowd, right?
Right.
And so as long as the voice is speaking to the movement and speaking the narrative that needs to be heard, then if you got that voice, let's use your voice. And when it's time for the thinkers to come in, don't get upset because you're not a thinker, right?
Yeah.
So everybody has a role to play. So rally the troops. Then you've got to have strategic communication. If this is going to continue to be a movement, right? One of the things that Barack Obama has said time and time again is that I was a two-term president because I had people that were in their 20s who knew how to work social media.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he himself, he's written about it on interviews, he speaks about it, that he used social media better than his opponent. And then now, what do we see? People coming after Obama, even at local levels, are using his plan, his approach, right? So you've got to have set communication so that you don't just have one group educated. Let me keep going. Then back, I think it was Fanita that said it. Your movement has to be noticed by people who matter.
Yeah.
And they may not look like you. They may not go to the same kind of church you go to. They may not vote like you. But if they're in positions to affect change, I think this is what Fanika and Shanita were talking about. If they're at the right table to get the law passed, the ordinance passed, or the law repealed, or the congressperson recalled, it's got to be something that will get noticed. And then the last thing is you got to know when to take it easy. See, you can't be angry. There are certain things that make you angry, but when you're in certain spaces, that will mute you. That will nullify your presence. If you don't know how to speak when you get the microphone, if you're in a policy conversation, right? Then you've got to know how to speak policy, and there's got to be people in our movement that we can say, "Hey, tag, you're it."
Man, that's
No, come on, Craig. Come on.
great.
Two
Don't
things.
You
We
froze.
got to be able.
Okay, there you go.
Am I froze?
You good. You
Am I
good.
back?
oh
The devil is a liar. Come on.
Hey, I felt like I had something on my face for a minute. So again, when we're talking about this becoming a movement, at some point, and I said this last week, we have got to move, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
At some point, and Louder, me and you talked about this in the DMs before the very first episode, that
Yes, sir.
at some point we're passionate about it, and we know others who are passionate about it. So there's got to become a strategic planning session. And here's what I wrote down, because Fanita said it so eloquently last week, I think, that there are already people, and somebody else said it today, there are already people who've been fighting this fight for decades, right? There are people who've been on the front lines, and we're not just talking about protesting and marching. We're talking about people who faithfully show up to meetings, faithfully show up in policy discussions, faithfully work on campaigns, whatever it is. So one of the things that hit me is that as this becomes a movement, and I'm saying we on this panel right now, and there are others we're connected to, we've either got to utilize, revitalize, or combine the efforts that are already ongoing, some kind of way, so that we're not working against each other. I think Fanita said last week, don't reinvent the wheel. So we either got to utilize what's working, avenues that are working, organizations that are effective, or they need to either be revitalized, or we need to combine. Because what the risk is, we run the risk of having little segments, little movements, But what do we always say? United we stand, and divided, right, we'll be weak. Right?
Yeah.
Paul said it best when he said, you know, when you come to a table, you can't just come to the table with talk. You got to have money. And if we're divided, and this little group over here got money, and this little group over here, you know, got a little bit of money, but ain't nobody paying you no attention because you can't do it, right? So here, somebody just said, what's the plan? Here's what I'm getting with that. So we need, then we talked about education. So then my cousin in the housing authority, or my auntie out in the country, both of them need access to this education we're talking about. Both of them need access to resources. So maybe our movement starts with pulling in all the resources, or pulling together a document or something that documents where people can go to get this education we're talking about.
Yeah.
See, because if auntie doesn't vote because she doesn't think her vote counts, then how does auntie learn that her vote counts? See, there's got to be a list of resources and a list of available educational resources, whatever. We're educating, and this may already be happening, but again, my cousin in the housing project or my auntie out in the country may not be hearing about it.
Right.
So where do we go to find that out? And then we need mediums or organizations who will join this movement and fund this movement, play a part in this movement to educate, you know. So we've got to have that conversation. And then the last thing is what really fuels the movement, aside from leadership, followership, all of those things, again, is there's got to be a consistent rally around the issues. And that's kind of why I spoke to media today showing COVID-19, and you know, I didn't see a whole lot of CNN. I even looked at Fox, I looked at MSNBC, I looked at some of the locals. There wasn't a whole lot about who's protesting, what's going on today. So if this movement is to do what we believe it will do, and I believe it will, because I believe it's God ordained and God designed, there's got to be a consistent rally around the issues, which means a speaking of what we're focusing on right now. And that's not to minimize what's affecting East Macon or minimize what's affecting East Albany and elevate what's going on in Warner Robins or wherever, but it's strategic. And so we're attacking here, we're mobilizing here, and then this is our path, or this is where we go. So I sum it all up by saying this. This thing did not happen. And when I say this thing, this panel, George Floyd, all of this, all of us are a product of this moment. This did not happen by happenstance. This did not happen because, let me just say how I feel it. God knew, because God scheduled, God allowed the George Floyd moment to happen. God knew this was coming. God knew that there would be people who would be passionate in this season, just like they were passionate in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. And so I believe that because he's a God of justice, those who identify with him are passionate about what he's passionate about. Yeah. Which speaks to the narrative of what you said, Jay, that every church ought to have something to say about Matthew 25, right? When I was hungry, when I was naked, every church, you've got to talk like Jesus talked. And you've got to care like Jesus cared. So as this becomes a movement, we organize and we strategize around the tie that binds us, and that's the word of God. And from the word, and I think Nick said it, from the word, then we bring in our SMEs, right? Our subject matter experts. If you're good on finance, if you're good on policy, if you got an effective way to get mass people registered to vote, right? Then we need you. This is the time. But there's got to be a coming together and an identifying, okay, what is the next step?
Yeah.
You know we need to educate. So how? Last thing, and I promise I'm out. Millennials and Gen Xers even younger than that. The
Oh, you
thing
froze.
now that they want to know more than anything, whether it's about coming to church or showing up at a Whitby rally or whatever, is why. You've got to be able to tell me why. That's the question that now back in the day, it was, I think Andy, what's his name in Atlanta? Andy Stanley said people will howl your vision to death. Right? There's an older generation that will say, how? I don't see it. How's that going to happen? How are we going to pay for it? All that stuff. But the younger generation, I hear you, Patrick, Tony. The younger generation wants to know why. Why is this important? Why? Why do I need to be involved? And we have got to answer that question. We got to answer that question.
And you know what? That's the question we're gonna answer in episode 4. We're gonna answer where do we go next? and then
What Dominique doing?
man, we don't know. Don't even elevate it.
What happened? What's happening?
Nick, what in the world? See,
Oh, nothing.
here. Watch this. And again, I got to thank everybody who tunes in tonight. I don't, this number is not accurate, but I do know it's over 100 people in all formats watching us right now. We're on 4 different formats right now, and I'm pretty sure, I know we got people who share this and all that stuff. So thank you so much for everybody who got this to watch this. I wanna say it like this. A generation does not care what you think until a generation knows that you care. Myself and Paul Little heard that from Paul's predecessor, the great Reverend Teddy Parker Jr. He used to tell us all the time, a generation who does not know that you care don't care what you think. And he will always remind us, if the word is not going to move them, nothing will. And so tonight, our aim and goal was to educate you so that you could get understanding in regards to what's the next move and what's the strategy. And so,
Time out.
Paul Little, what is it?
Belvin tripping, man.
Oh, man, Belvin Ware needs Jesus. Hey, Belvin Ware, don't make us bring you on here because we'll be on here another hour. Belvin Ware. Hey, don't worry, Shanita's gonna be the one who's gonna. When we toss Shanita the mic on episode 4, we all gonna go like this right here.
Oh, Jesus.
Hey, listen, and I know we're funny, y'all. This is how we do. Belvin Ware is the one. You saw his comments earlier talking about episode 1, 2, 3.
3, 4.
Now, hey, this ain't the last dance.
Hey, Jay.
Yo, man.
I know we're finna close out. It's a sister of Veronica McClendon who just happens to be a member of Kingdom Life. She's the she's the Macon Bar president this year, and so I think Paul answered one of her questions. She was asking about a list of questions that she can take to the Macon Bar society. So I think Paul will get with on that so they can
Come back,
so
nigga.
they can volunteer to come into churches or maybe do it about not come in. You know what I'm saying? Shouldn't need that. She's out there, and then for Nika, I don't know if you see her post. She just said, "Where can she find those recommendations?" So I let y'all hook up some type of way that you had. So I just thought of a question, and I can't respond to everybody's question, but I'm gonna be quiet on one because it'll probably lead us somewhere else that everybody log off, and I'm gonna just stay right. So I'm gonna be quiet.
And Pastor, let me throw this shameless plug in there too as well. If any ministries are interested in starting or having a conversation about having some type of social justice or civic engagement or civic education at your church and don't know where to get started, because sometimes we need to have an honest conversation with ourselves about where I am, what I'm afraid of, and those different things. You can go to ShanitaDavis.com and send me a little thing on there as a request, and we can have a conversation about how you might be able to get started.
Wait a minute.
Oh, look, get my name. Somebody got my name. I can't get DominiqueJohnson.com. I gotta put Dominique Smith or something.
I can't even get JLouder.com. So
Bro, I'm telling you, it's rough out here.
That mean you're not favored of the Lord.
Oh,
Y'all can go to info@FanikaMiller.com and request that information as well.
Lord. Oh.
Is Paul talking?
Yeah, if y'all want to get with Pastor Dominique Johnson, go to his MySpace page. And
hey, Paul.
Hey, if Paul go to his Black Planet, P Little at BlackPlanet.com.
Hey, man.
Now we send it.
Hey, Paul, hey, I ain't want to tell him. That's how Paul met Natalie on BlackPlanet.com.
BlackPlanet.com. But look, I wanted to make sure, because I was going to recommend that if people wanted to form social justice or community engagement ministries, to reach out to Shanita and something as it relates to civic and political engagement. For Nika Miller, obviously leadership, grassroots efforts, outreach, Pastor Dominique Johnson, Craig Moore, and Pastor Louder. And so I think that we have a plethora of resources here. And so if there can be, if I can be of assistance, y'all let us know. But I think we have a wealth of knowledge and information here.
And hey, Paul, to pick back on that. Hold on, Greg. Pick back on that. The reason we want everybody to know while we laugh at each other, but we are serious about supporting each other. We are serious about supporting each other. Because again, I know growing up in the church I did, they were always closed with "Blessed be the tie that binds." And I'll talk about that next time, Paul, off camera. But the tie that binds us here more than anything is the fact of our love for life, our love for freedom, but also our love for our people. Because again, at the end of the day, we all we got. We all we got. And so, Craig, go ahead and holler real quick, and then.
Yeah, I was just gonna throw this in there too, because we kind of, I think somebody mentioned it once, but there's a definite need in the Black community, as we're educating, as we're preparing, we've got to speak to the mental health issues, because that is a subject that has been faux pas in our culture, especially, especially a couple of generations back, where grandparents would say, you ain't got no self-esteem, ain't nothing wrong with you, or you gonna be all right, just tough it out, and they did the best they could. They didn't know better, right? But
hey, Craig, you had that aunt they kept in the room back there. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
And they didn't. And they didn't.
She need to go get me about that one. I'm sorry.
They didn't know how to talk it, you know. But mental health, and the reason why I say that is because you draw a direct line when you're talking about the way they were talking about strategically defunding the police. One of the most calls that police get is mental health cases.
Right.
And from working, work with the state in mental health, oftentimes police are not trained on how to respond to that. There's no, and so when you're talking about shifting funding, that's one of those areas that we've got to speak to, because or even community policing, right? There are police departments who fund training and all of these efforts for community policing. So there is an approach that is nonviolent, that is non-armed at times, and the whole goal is to go in and love the community, walk with the community, get to know the community. So this needs to be a widespread effort, But when you're talking about, I wanted to mention that about mental health, because a lot of times police are called, and you get there and you find out the person may be schizophrenic, maybe bipolar, maybe didn't take their medicine,
Yep.
So.
And we have to again be there to help those people in that narrative as well. So
Yeah.
listen, y'all,
Yeah.
man, this has been a fun night tonight.
Mhm.
I'm gonna ask all of my yeah, that's the sign that Mike is, when he comes in,
Time to go.
time to go. Listen, next Tuesday we'll see y'all for episode 4. I want to say I appreciate each and every one of you. Panelists, if y'all do me a favor in the comments, put if you have an email address or just your contact, what you would prefer. I think Shanita and Fanika already did their website on there. So I guess I'm going to go, Paul, I'm going to need you with your creative culture thing to go ahead and get mine out there, all right?
And create culture. I put mine in there.
Okay, yeah, and just go and put my website together and I'll pay you for it.
To make that happen for you.
Praise the Lord. So listen, we love each of you. Share this. If you missed any part of it, go back, ma'am, go back, sir, watch it. And if you missed the other 2 episodes, get caught up on it, because you don't want to be late next week when we talk about what's next. And also, so I play it. Y'all be real.
You don't want to be late.
Yeah, you don't want to be late because
7:28.
So we say 7:28 and start at 7:10.
hey, I'm glad we did start at 7:10 tonight, because this one right here.
Hey, God, baby.
Hey, the God that went well. Watch this. This is who we do it for.
That's right.
That's who we're doing it for. Shanita should be at your house to get training in intercessory. And hey man, y'all be blessed. Y'all be great. More than anything, be a catalyst.
Glad to be on with you.
All right, I'll see y'all. All right, man. Appreciate y'all.
I'm gonna be on vacation.